Hello everyone, and welcome to a video where I, Mate Nason, am going to be talking about some of the best games that I learned in 2020. Now these are not board games that came out in 2020, but instead these are games that have been out for a while and I had finally got a chance to play them. So let's jump in and see what great games I discovered for the first time. Number 10 on this list is a game that came out in 2002. It had been around for a long time, and I finally got a chance to play it, and that is Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is a very traditional game where you are making a colony on the island of Puerto Rico. You need to make a plantation to get your raw goods, process them, and then trade them. I can see why this game was very popular when it first came out, and it still holds up today with that very basic mechanic of processing and trading goods for income. But what I loved about this game is the action selection of choosing a role. Every player, every round, chooses one role to be, whether it's the builder who gets to build buildings or the trader who gets to initiate the trade phase. Not just that, you get to do simultaneous turns with these roles, which I love games that do this. When someone takes that builder card, they get to build their building, and they get a discount for it for taking that card. But every player at the table also takes a build action that turn. So the game moves at a good speed, with everyone choosing these actions, deciding what kind of bonuses they want. And then, of course, the three-tiered step of processing, refining, and trading was a lot of fun. So Puerto Rico, great game, been around for a long time, finally got a chance to play it. Moving on down the list, my number 9 game is a game originally published by GMT in 2003, got a reprint via Kickstarter in 2018, and that is Medieval. Medieval is a very good, intriguing politics game. It is a war game. It's not really dudes on a map, but it's an area control game, very similar to games like Game of Thrones, maybe even some aspects like Twilight Imperium, where you are basically playing as this cabal or this secret faction trying to pull the strings in medieval Europe. And what you do is you conquer cities, which gives you control of these countries, and once you control countries, you can then launch wars and attacks. Like the Matt Garrett's game Imperial, the control of different countries can switch hands throughout the game, so there's a lot of negotiation going on of who can cross whose borders. There's some fun take that elements with very thematic cards where you could elect yourself Pope, force other people to go on crusades, and the game countdown mechanism to when it ends is intriguing. There's this constant threat of this Mongol horde burning and laying waste coming into Europe from the east, and eventually once they've conquered so much land, the game is over, and whoever controls the most cities then wins the game. A very fun game, very easily overlooked, not talked about a lot, but it is a good game. You should check it out. That is Medieval. Coming up next on my list is a game that actually did come out in 2020, and I got a chance to play it, and it is Ride the Rails. Ride the Rails is it comes off as a very traditional train game. I've played games like Ticket to Ride, Crayon Rail games, pick up and deliver games. So when I saw this, it didn't really hit me that it would be something so unique or what the interesting twist of this genre could be. But Ride the Rails did something quite fascinating that I enjoyed. It mixed in a little bit of some stock element to the game, and it mixed in the fact that everybody is building a rail network together. So instead of like Ticket to Ride where you're working on your own paths or other pick up and deliver games like that, here you invest in a train company, for example, and that lets you start building paths of that company. And as you invest in more companies, it gives you the ability to start building more rail networks of all these different colored train companies. And then at the end of every round, you ride the rails and you take a passenger at the longest route you can, going from city to city, getting points for every city you go to. However, each other player will also gain points for that route too, as long as they have invested in that train company. Call it dividends. So this game has a neat little stock element. You're not really buying or trading stocks, but by investing in that, you can regroup some points, and you're very interested in how other players are going to be maximizing riding the rails so you can get those dividends. A fun twist on the genre. It's simple, but got a lot of strategic depth. I love it. That's Ride the Rails. My number 7 game is a game by Matt Garrett's, and I love Matt Garrett's games. I love Imperial and TK2. Concordia is one of my favorites as well. And I finally got a chance to play one of his games from 2010, and that is Navigator. Navigator is kind of almost a race game. You are sending ships out from Europe and you're going to South America, you're going around Africa to the Indies, and eventually when a player gets to Japan, the game is over. So the game has this tension as these ships are moving around the ocean, opening up trade routes. But the core concept of the game is this trading of unrefined goods and processing them into finished goods. It's got a wonderful market element, a beautiful, simplistic economy on this market board. When people ship back lots of unprocessed goods that they've traded from all over the world, the price starts to drop very quickly in how much those goods are worth. However, inversely, as the goods go down, the value of the processed goods start to skyrocket. And so there's this song and dance of people shipping back unprocessed goods, driving up the price of the processed goods, meaning you need to start building factories so you can process them, and then you get lots of money, but then all of a sudden the unrefined goods prices start to skyrocket. And so you can play off each other. Is this person sending back goods? I better try to get my factories ready. Or you can try to make a little monopoly of the game by building your own factories. Wonderful strategic choices in this game, not to mention that race element. The game could end at any moment if some player is moving their ships really quickly, building those trade routes. The game will end fast. So a lot of fun in that game. That is Navigator by Matt Garrett's. Going on to my number 6 game is a game that originally came out in 2009, got re-released on Kickstarter in 2018, and it is a deck building game called Thunderstone Quest. Now, Thunderstone Quest is a deck building game where you are dungeon diving. You have this board that has your market where you can get different characters in your deck to help you fight monsters in this dungeon. You can get magical spells. You need to load up on healing potions and torches to see in the dark. And then you move your little miniature through these different rooms to fight monsters and get treasure and all these points. The game itself is simple. I basically explained everything there is to it, but it just does it so well, so clean, and there are so many cards. There's so many choices of how you can build these decks. There's campaigns. You can play it cooperatively or competitively. You can put cards together to make a story and a theme, or you can shuffle them all together to make a random type of encounter of what goods and cards you can buy. Just a really good deck building game that mixes in that genre of dungeon diving and fighting monsters, which is very fun. That is Thunderstone Quest. Going on to my number 5 game is a game that originally came out in 2011 by Stefan Feld. I enjoy a lot of Stefan Feld games. I like the point salad nature of his games. I like how everything you're doing gives you points, so you always feel like you're making progress in his games. This is probably one of his most famous games that I finally got a chance to play, and that is Castles of Burgundy. Castles of Burgundy is a worker placement dice game where you have your own little player board and you're kind of building this little city, this little tableau in front of you. You got your cities with your townhouses, you've got your prairies, you've got the shipping track you're trying to get to. And so every turn you're rolling dice, you are selecting tiles that you want to then put into your estate, and then you need to take more actions to decide where to put those tiles. The dice you roll dictate where those tiles can go, so you need to really plan out how your dice are working. There's a small trading element to the game where you can save up these good tokens and cash them in. Just everything you're doing lets you manipulate dice to get points, lets you put down token or tiles to get points, moving around in that shipping track to get those goods out, get you points. So everything you're doing is fun, making you points, having a great time building your little city, your tableau of tiles in front of you. Just a good experience. I can't believe it took me so long to finally get a chance to play it. That's Castles in Burgundy, my number 5. My number 4 is a game that came out in 2019. And what intrigued me about this game first was the art. The art was gorgeous. It kind of pulled me right into this immersive story, and that is Court of the Dead. Court of the Dead is a game where you are playing this area control game in the depths of hell, basically. And you need to send out your army miniatures to conquer different territories and regions, which will get you more resources or different bonuses. But the fascinating thing about this game that I loved is that these little miniatures or workers that you're getting are from different factions. And so you can recruit from, I think there's 4 different factions, maybe 5, and each one of those gives you different abilities. So each worker or soldier or monster that you're putting out on the board has different abilities of how it works. And if you can get a majority in those factions, that unlocks another bonus for you. The game has a fun quest aspect of it. Each round a quest card comes out, so you're kind of racing to see who the first player to accomplish this could be. I love games with drafting elements, and this has one of those too. Every round you get to draft a character card that kind of gives you a special ability that round. So you can try to choose cards that'll help you for your strategic goal. So I love the area control aspect of it. I like building my little tableau of miniatures that have different faction abilities in front of me, and then I love drafting these really big cards that give me cool abilities. Plus the art's gorgeous, the theme is fun. Court of the Dead, check it out, really good game. Coming in at number 3 is a worker placement game that easily could have gone under my radar. It came out in 2019, and that is Terra Mara. So Terra Mara is, on the cover and on the back, it really just looks like a very generic worker placement game. Send out a worker, get some stone, get some wood, build something. When I first saw it, I thought of games like Stone Age. And so it didn't really wow me from the cover reading the back. But oh, was I wrong. This is probably one of the most brutal, brain-breaking worker placement games I have ever played, and it is wonderful. There's just so much going on in this game. At its heart, it is a simple worker placement game of gaining those resources to buy these technology cards, which is your main source of victory points. However, throughout the game, you have, I think, 5 rounds you play through, and you can send your workers to the current round's action spaces, or you could send them to future action spaces, like round 4, for example. Maybe you see a very juicy action space that'll help you. Go ahead, you can send your worker there. However, that worker's not gonna come back until round 4. So you have this interesting decision of when do you push forward into the future to really net you a great benefit now, or when do you hold back? That's an interesting decision. This game also, every round, eliminates the action spaces you could go to for that round. So as the rounds are progressing, you are losing action spaces. So it keeps the game really tight. It replaces those old action spaces with one very special or giant action space you can go to that gives you an end game bonus. So as the action spaces go away, you unlock these end game bonuses, basically. So that itself could be enough to make a phenomenal game, but this game does even another twist. There are 3 tracks on this game that you cannot go down all of them, but oh my goodness, you need to. There's this warfare track, and if you are ahead on the warfare track, you can go in spaces everybody else is in. You need to do that because it's so tight. There's also this caravan track. You have to go down this caravan track because being down that track is what lets you go to those end game scoring spaces. So you need those to get those points. And then finally, there's this river track. And being further on that river track unlocks more cards for you to buy. That's where your victory points are coming from. So you have these 3 tracks you need to go on, but it's so hard to do all 3 of them. And at the same time, these spaces are coming and going that you can go to. So brutal, so tight, but so fun. That is Terra Mara, came out in 2019, my number 3. Moving on down the list to my number 2 game, we have a game that originally came out in 2009, was re-released via Kickstarter in 2018, and that is Endeavor: Age of Sail. This, again, is another area control type game where you are trying to control shipping lanes from Europe. You're trying to get to North America, South America, India. And so basically each turn you're taking these actions to claim these different areas on these tracks, trying to connect chains of shipping tracks. You can unlock these regions like India and South America, and if you are the person who unlocks that with the most discs on those shipping lanes, then you get to be the governor of those regions, which give you even more scoring points and opportunities. But probably one of the most interesting aspects of this game is as you are claiming these shipping links, these shipping routes, you are gaining resources. However, you're not actually gaining them in numbers. You're actually unlocking the ability to use those resources. For example, if you have unlocked 5 bricks, you never have to spend those 5 bricks, but all of a sudden anything that costs 5 bricks or less is open and available to you. So the simple mechanics of this game of just unlocking resources to let you purchase or do more things is brilliant. I also like the fact the game starts off slow and starts to build to this wonderful crescendo. At the start of the game, you only have 1 or 2 actions you can do, but every round afterwards, you add 1 more additional action available to you that you get to choose. Maybe you want to choose actions to let you ship more, or actions that'll let you start fighting people to take over their shipping routes, or maybe actions that just give you straight points. So it gives you that freedom to choose your own strategy, but it does it in a very simplified progression that I think works really well. That is Endeavor Age of Sail, my number 2. That finally brings us to my favorite game that I learned in 2020. It's a game that came out in 2019 by John D. Clare, and that is Edge of Darkness. I absolutely love deck building games. And I love the fact of being able to craft my own deck. And John D. Clare took his signature mechanic of card crafting that came out in the game Mystic Vale, which I've played Mystic Vale, and honestly I was not a fan of it. The concept in Edge of Darkness is the same, and I loved the concept, this idea of building and upgrading your own cards. Each card starts off with 1 action, but throughout the game you can maybe add another action, so now this card has 2 abilities, and then finally you could add a 3rd action to the card, so now every card you're playing has 3 different actions you can do on it, so the game starts to build. I like that. I like creating my own cards and doing the own combos. That's awesome. Mystic Vale I found very boring, however, but Edge of Darkness adds a lot of tension in this game. You're basically trying to protect this city from a darkness that's encroaching upon you. And so you are purchasing these cards, you are purchasing these upgrades to slot into these cards. You are trying to claim these cards so you can get more points for them at the end of the game. There's a worker placement aspect to this game where you can recruit agents and send them out to different districts in the city to do things to try to help protect the city. These monsters are always coming at you, so you need to be able to go out and fight them. Fighting them is really fun and simple. You have this threat tower where you're dropping cubes down this tower, which is going to show what player these monsters are going to attack. And if they're coming for you, you need to either build up your defenses or go out and hunt that monster before it attacks you. So there's this threat and tension always looming over the game. Not to mention this game and the 2 expansions gives you, I think, 100 cards. I mean, there's so many cards in this game, and you only play with 10 of them every game. So no 2 games are going to be the same. The way you recruit your workers in one game will be completely different from game to game, or how you even start the fight, or how you claim cards. So each game just throws a whole new twist to it, but still has that fun central theme of crafting your cards, building your deck, going out and hunting monsters, which is fun. My number 1, Edge of Darkness. So there is my top 10 games that I learned in 2020. Let me know in the comments what games you learned in 2020 that you loved. Are there any games on my list that you've played for a long time or haven't tried? I'd love to hear about it. And stay tuned for my next video where I'm going to be talking about the 10 worst games I learned in 2020. So I'll see you then.